this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Hey everyone, I'm on vacation this week, but I still wanted to bring you something for becoming a Best Ball Bro. We've done this each year with the show, but Rich, as in my co-host Rich Ryan, he's put together a nice little compilation of some of the most interesting insights from our shows thus far this season. We've had some great guests, and I know that some of you are just now getting into things. You're just now focusing on fantasy football for this 2026 season. So this is a way to get caught up with Best Ball. I'll be back next week with our typical show. I'll talk to you then. I'm JJ, and over the last couple of years, I've been doing everything I can to be a Best Ball Bro. And last season, things finally fell into place. I got 40th in the DraftKings Millie Contest, taking home $20,000. Maybe I became a Best Ball Bro, but I'm still looking to learn more about this game. And I still want others to come on this ride with me. So even if you consider me a Best Ball Bro, this could be your year. This could be the year that you officially become a Best Ball Bro. This episode is sponsored by DraftKings. We've partnered up with DraftKings again this year for Best Ball, and we've got a can't-miss offer on their biggest Best Ball contest ever. $20 million in total prizes. It's draft one, get one. Draft your team once, no weekly lineup management, and your top scorers start automatically each week, all season long. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app and sign up with promo code LATEROUND. Enter a lineup in the $20 million Best Ball contest for $25 and get a bonus ticket for a second entry. 2 shots at the title. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Pat Kerrane, what's one of the biggest difference that you're seeing year over year? Or I mean, you could be looking at this landscape and thinking that it's the same, but what are you seeing overall, and if there is a change year over year?
Well, one thing is, this year we have a different rookie class than last year, and there's some strengths and weaknesses, mostly weaknesses compared to last year's rookie class. And I think that changes things up in some pretty big ways for this year's landscape in best ball. Rookies, have been a pretty big part, especially rookie receivers have been like a pretty big edge in best ball leagues over the years. And so, I think you're seeing a couple things. One, the rookie running backs, there's a couple first rounders that go reasonably high. Mm-hmm. And I think both guys are interesting picks. I like Jeremiah Love more at ADP, but then you get past those guys and it really dries up. And we're talking, a lot of day 3 type of guys that here in June are hard to know for sure if we're going to get anything from this year. And not having interesting rookie upside swings in, let's say outside the top 6 rounds definitely shakes things up a bit. And then at wide receiver, I think some of the stink of the rookie class from a dynasty perspective has translated over to the best ball market. And I actually think there's some values at rookie wide receiver this year where they're a little bit cheaper than we've had over the past couple years. So those guys to me are actually targets. A number of them are pretty clear targets at cheaper prices than we've had recently, where rookie wide receivers have kind of had some inflation compared to where they used to go like 4 or 5 years ago.
With this rookie class, because I'll kind of skip ahead to another question that I wanted to ask you, but I think it's pretty pertinent and kind of ties into it. When I'm drafting right now, I'm looking at the late rounds and I feel awful about almost every player that is available in the late rounds of these drafts. My question to you is, do you think that this is a normal feeling that I feel every year and I've forgotten, and this is not any different than what we typically see? Or do you think that it is a weaker late round, round 18, round 19, round 20 type group than we've historically seen? And again, we have to give this context that we're doing this in June, where I think probably in July and August, we'll have at least some better idea of some situations and stuff like that. And players and the roles that they're going to play. And maybe we feel better about some more later round darts. Maybe you don't even feel this way at all, but do you think the rookie class is playing a huge role in that feeling that I'm feeling?
100% the rookie class is factoring in there. I mean, last year at the end of the summer, like final weeks of drafts, Kyle Monangai started popping as a pretty strong pick. And he remained available in like the 18th, 19th, 20th round on DraftKings. He was a 7th round pick. So it took a while for us to view him as a reasonable click. But I mean, it's hard for me to even see like who that would be, because like Katron Allen would probably be a comparable type of player. Well, Katron Allen's already getting drafted.
Right.
He's not available in those rounds now. So there's just not as many guys. Now, we were taking Jarquez Hunter. We were taking DJ Giddens. There were a bunch of landmines too. Sure. But it was the rookie class, the depth of the running back class did make it easier to kind of dream on these picks. And then also to ultimately find a couple of these guys who mattered, even if it took a while to kind of realize that Monungai was the best of the bunch in those final rounds. But yeah, I mean, I think there's also some NFL personnel shift stuff going on here a little bit, where we are seeing like more 2 tight end sets, more teams talking about how, I mean, the Jaguars talking about playing more 12. It's like, come on, man. I know. You've got 4
what
receivers.
Are you doing to us?
Yeah. Like Nate Borkatures, I got to worry about that.
Yeah.
So it's, you get down and you're like, what receivers can I just buy routes on? I think those guys, the depth of that kind of group of players is also probably a little thinner now than it was a couple years ago. And I think part of it is like, yeah, it isn't that fun always to, in the 19th round like that. That is not a high hit rate kind of group.
Sure.
And we probably have memory wiped some of the disgusting picks we were making over the past 3-4 years. But yeah, I mean, I'm taking more tight ends in those final rounds.
Yeah.
And I think that's one way to kind of, especially, I am considering on my streams just having like a rolling banner that says it's June, because like there's like, so like it used to be that like Scott Fishbowl kind of kicked things off and of the redraft. Like this was dynasty season. Like this was carved. We were sending trades. We're not really drafted.
We could relax a minute in June.
Yeah. And so that has changed. Like we're talking like definitively about the structures of teams in 2026 for, the entire offseason in the early part of June. And I think things will change. We're all so much more dialed in than we were like in 2019, this time of year, that it's like hard to remember that how much things can change and probably will change. So the late rounds will look different as we get more information. But for now, taking some of these tight ends, it does feel like a way where you're not just like completely punting and taking a 0. And you're like, maybe like with Eli Stowers, I probably am buying routes, particularly at the end of the season. His ADP is around 200 on DraftKings, right? So it's like you get late, and I'll take that 4th tight end who's probably going to be running routes at the end of the season. I'll take a stab on one of the Rams committee tight end guys. They're going to play a bunch of tight ends. We know that. So, Michael Mayer probably plays some. You can get into this. Charlie Kolar I've started to consider a little bit. Like, is it, purely as kind of a 20th round guy? He's a name on my mind. I'm not hammering him, but Mike Gesicki I've taken a lot of. Yeah. Because I think he's on a good offense. He'll run routes. It's going to be part-time. He'll spike for a couple weeks, but it's the same type of profile that you would have had probably a little bit more cheaply with some of these wide receivers that are harder to find once you get to the final rounds. And then I am taking, though, as I alluded to earlier, some of these rookie wide receivers. I still think those guys are underpriced. And you can get, even in the final rounds, you can get a Chris Brazzell. You can get the Jacoby Lane, Elijah Surratt, one or both those guys. If you want, you can get Zachariah Branch. There's a bunch of those rookie wide receivers that are still, Jeremy Bernard is still, he's more expensive than that. He's in the 180s, but he's pretty cheap for a second round pick. Right. So there's, once you get, not the final rounds, but late in the draft, those rookie wide receivers definitely pop too.
Well, with the tight ends, this is kind of, I feel like made me not go as hard at elite tight end right now is the fact that because the latter parts of the draft are, I should say more so McBride than Bowers, to be fair, but like because the latter parts of the draft are set up the way they're set up, where I feel relatively decent about like Terrence Ferguson having a role this year, like doing something at some point, right? And like being a tight end 3 or 4, even 4, right? Because if I'm waiting a decent, or like Pat Freiermuth or someone like that, where like
or Darnell Washington.
Sure.
Yeah.
there, and it's because of, like you said, the way the NFL has evolved, the way it's changed, and you're able to at least capture that position in that way. But then you're staring at like Brock Bowers, who could clearly go nuclear this year.
Yep.
You're staring at Trey McBride coming off the season that he had. Even Colson Loveland, you can make a very easy pro argument for. So what's been your approach at tight end? Has it been like, okay, I'm in round 2, I'm going to just draft Bowers and then obviously adjust, as I go? Or is it like, hey, I know that the way the landscape looks right now is that there's a lot of ambiguity in those late rounds where I'm probably going to just get tight end. So maybe I'm going to lean running back wide receiver instead in round 2 and not go after one of these guys, and then maybe get some of exposure to those guys later on in the year. Has that been a thought process, or has it just been like, no, I think Bowers is going to smash, I'm going to draft Brock Bowers?
Yeah, I think this question kind of goes to like, with best ball, there's sort of are you evaluating like what has worked in the past versus trying to be forward looking and what will work given a brand new set of ADPs that apply to this specific player pool that we're only going to get one shot at this offseason. And this is where we have a tool at Leg Up called the Sidekick it's a sim driven player recommendation tool. And we're able to evaluate things like what is available now versus what is available later by simming out the NFL season and then also the contest that you're in. And what we're seeing, honestly, is that like Bowers, the fact that these tight ends are available later does not mean that you need to avoid Bowers. And in fact, when you have Bowers, you do not need to limit yourself to 2 tight ends.
Yeah.
Like if you get to the final rounds and it's like, there aren't any good players left, but there's some tight ends who could hit your lineup, you should probably take those tight ends.
Yeah.
It might be the case that you have extra roster spots as well if you went with a build that's like 4 or 5 total running backs where you got some running backs early. I don't think you necessarily need 11 wide receivers even on full PPR in 20 rounds on DraftKings. Like you can have 9 wide receivers. You can have, 3, maybe even 4 tight ends, depending on where your tight end 2 came with a Brock Bowers or Trey McBride or Colson Loveland or Tyler Warren or whatever. Like you can still build in some depth at that position if the opportunity cost at the other positions is pretty low. And if you have, I think particularly if you have running back covered with kind of a hyper fragile build, where you've got at least a couple early kind of hammers.
Liam Murphy, what's one of the biggest differences that you see year over year? Do you think that it's the same that we're seeing year over year? Are there major differences, or do you think it's mostly what we saw last year?
No, it's major differences, and I think that's a fun puzzle piece, right? Like for the past couple of years, I would say the market has mostly remained the same. And it's not really clear to me exactly why we're seeing these wide market changes, but the market is very different, specifically at running back and quarterback, I would say. Running back, since BBM2, so that's 2021, since 2020, we have not seen running backs this expensive in drafts. And with quarterback, like you used to be able to get like CJ Stroud or the other rookie guys who went literally second in the draft. They would be like 18th round draft picks.
Right.
Or you think of Matt Stafford last year and he was whatever, like a 15th round pick, especially after the back stuff. Or Daniel Jones was like a 17th round pick. Even the stinkers of the quarterbacks like Geno, Rodgers, Mendoza, I'm looking at a high stakes draft I did yesterday on DraftKings. They're gone by the 14th round. So the true stinkers are like job security guys, the Atlanta quarterbacks, the Browns quarterbacks. Like it's way different there. And then of course at running back, we got about 5 running backs, maybe 6 consistently going in the first round. We have not seen that forever. And even like the dead zone guys of yesteryear, that's probably like the 5th round to the 10th round, where like some of these guys are going to be big hits and I like some of them. So I'm talking anyone from like Swift Scatabo down to Dobbins, White or whatever, whatever range you want to say there. some of them can be big hits. Some of them are going to be silent killers. That maybe Chuba, like some of these guys I'm softer on, but that's what I'm seeing. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the big thing that kind of a continuation, like a trend, like it was happening a little bit last year, and now it's just continued as the quarterback thing that you mentioned, where I guess my question back to you about the quarterback stuff is that you now are seeing those lower end QB2s, mid-range QB2s being pushed up, right? They're being drafted earlier. Is that making you want to get the elite quarterbacks more? Because obviously, if you can't get the value as late, that would mean getting the value early is a little bit easier to swallow, just given the cost of that. And then on top of that, I talked to Pat Kerrane last week, who was very much fading Josh Allen given the cost. And so this plays into that, right? Where if some of these quarterbacks are going a little bit earlier and you're not able to get a guy in round 18 that you were able to get 2 or 3 years ago, does that make you lean into the Josh Allen thing more?
Yeah, I saw that question on the sheet, and I think it should be brought up now. So I'm happy you did that. Like the consensus thought process is you have to get 3 quarterbacks. You need 3 quarterbacks in every draft, and you need it by X round or whatever. And I think that is so misguided and just reacting to last year and lacks all context. Where again, the reason why 3 quarterback hit is because you could literally get Matt Stafford, Daniel Jones. Like these were the cheap bets you could get. Okay. These were the guys you could get at the end of drafts. Jackson Dart, guys who were legit top 5 quarterback options in fantasy for weeks at a time. And now the late round options are Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Tua, Mendoza, Brissett. Like ask yourself, are these guys going to hit in the way that Stafford did? Are they going to hit in the way that Daniel Jones did? And like to me, the answer is obviously no. Maybe you could say, like if anyone is, it's going to be Mendoza because he was a high draft pick. So right. Sure, like that's a mystery box that I'm willing to do. So I don't feel compelled to do 3 quarterback in every draft. Like I'm comfortable to get 2 by the like Baker Mayfield line, depending. So I'll go as thin as like Goff and Baker or Kyler Murray and Bo Nix. Some combo of this. Not saying I won't take a 3rd quarterback, but I'm not so stringent where it's like, I need my 3rd quarterback. And then, yeah, of course, like I think it's very short-sighted to view Josh Allen and be like, he's a fade. Like I think it's pretty easily level 1 thinking where you look at Josh Allen, he goes in the 3rd. And I'll admit, there's no real rhyme or reason why he should have such a gap on Lamar, Joe Burrow, maybe some of these Drake Mays, Jaden Daniels, Dak, Caleb Williams guys who go in the 5th through 6th.
Yeah.
But what you should be thinking through is like, what's the cost of the stack? So if we look at Josh Allen and like, let's just pick Drake May. Okay. So AJ Brown and Drake May, you got to burn a 2nd round pick to get AJ Brown, where Josh Allen and DJ Moore or Josh Allen, Dalton Kincaid, whatever, like, you're getting a 2nd round player instead of AJ Brown. So I don't really think it's that expensive of a price to spend on Josh Allen. And it honestly just doesn't even really matter where it's like, look, if you want a full faded player, that's a variance question. That's a risk tolerance question. To me, I think it's obviously no. I'm out at Josh Allen at a 2nd round cost. Like that to me is just a little ridiculous. But I was doing a 5.55 yesterday. He fell to me to the back of the 3rd. Sometimes he goes to the 4th. I think it's a no-brainer to mix him in there, especially because you should be asking yourself, like, can this be a guy you need to win the contest?
Yeah.
And the answer is so obviously yes, where he gets the Dolphins. Like, can Josh Allen drop 40 against the Dolphins? Yes. Is that pretty realistic? Yes. Right? Yeah. So, to me, I'm not fading him. And then to your point, when I get Josh Allen, yeah, I can just take Josh Allen, Malik Willis, Josh Allen, Tyler Shuck, Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, and I don't need to fool around in this like round 7 to 11 range where a lot of people are going 3 quarterback.
What do you think your portfolio will end up as when you look at 2 versus 3 quarterback builds? Like how just so people listening would like have an idea of where your head's at with sort of the proportion of the 2.
I generally lean 2 QB. It's worse for advance rate, but it's like I don't care about advance rate as much as other people. Like I'm okay rolling up in December and people making fun of me and being like, he only advanced 23 teams. Like, I'm not playing for looking good week 15. I'm playing what I think is optimal to win the contest. And so, yeah, I will do 3 quarterback when it makes sense. Like, say I have a Cardinal Tate and I already have Dart and Love and Cam Ward's there. Yeah, I'll take him, but I'm not going to pass him if I think there's a literal difference maker at the position. Like, I'm looking to go 3 quarterback more when it's like I have Malik Willis, Tyler Shuck. Yes, I really want a third on that because it's all like kind of mystery boxy. Right. I personally like the Malik Willis bet, but it is uncertain. Yeah. So I lean more to QB, and I don't know exactly. Like, I'm also not such a nerd with it where I'm like, I have 18% 3. Like, I'm just drafting each draft. And that's why best ball is great. It's like you draft, you're done. Let's find out who wins at the end of the year. Like, I'm not using a caddy. I'm not going through. Like, I know roughly who I'm taking and who I'm not.
When you refer to the playoff weeks, right, and you refer to the 2 quarterback build versus 3 quarterback, is that something that you are saying, I have outs at wide receiver, running back in a stack that other people might not because they spent that on that pick on a quarterback instead of boosting up or bolstering that, or just another running back and wide receiver that could potentially hit? Or is it a larger roster construction thing also where that if the meta right now is 3 quarterback and that a lot of these teams are 3 quarterback, you just have an inherent edge because there's just a different roster construction that you're using once you get to the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does boil down to my core philosophy is hitting a difference maker at a skill position is more important than having a third quarterback. So, yeah, look, does it suck when one of your quarterback gets hurt or both get hurt and you got a dead team? Sure. But you think of the guys who make you win this contest, having another shot at getting Rashad Penny that year, Amon-Ra St. Brown, his rookie year. These are the things to me that decide who wins the contest and who doesn't. And we do see quarterbacks separate at times, of course. And so, yeah, technically you'll have another shot of that if you tack on Tua. But again, like, I'm not panicked with it. Like, as long as I have 2 guys, I feel reasonable. And it comes back to me from like your home league. Like, pretend you have a home league, you have a good team, and your only quarterback is Jordan Love. You're not feeling like your team is like dead each week, right? Like, yeah, okay, you're not feeling great, but you got Jordan Love, you got a second guy, reasonable, right? But yeah, I do want to have more shots at landing the difference maker, which to me comes at running back and wideout.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Neil Orfield. The thing that I always struggle with is then getting proper exposure based on what I think is the optimal strategy to take in some of these drafts. Like, for instance, like, if you think going running back is like the way to go, especially if you're in the back half of the first round or something like that, which we'll get to in a second. If you think going running back like that is optimal, then sure, you'll get some different iterations for the running backs that you're taking, but maybe you never get CeeDee Lamb, even though you probably want some exposure to CeeDee Lamb. Is that something that you're constantly thinking about in general? Is it something that you're thinking about right now in June, or is it something that you worry about a little bit later in the season if you're doing something like the Millie, where you know that you can kind of even out exposure as the summer goes on?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I'm thinking about constantly, but it's not something that I'm acting on as much right now as it will be later on. Like you said, like, because you and I, we're going to be drafting all summer. Like we have time to even out our exposures if we want to. But generally, I think it's just draft to draft, just making the best pick for that draft. I think it's generally the correct approach because ADP is going to shift throughout the year. And you're going to have different opportunities throughout the year because, ADP shifts like we saw with, we've seen AJ Brown shift from a 3rd round pick to a 2nd round pick. And so, it's better to get him in the 3rd round. And you see that throughout the summer, all these different players are going to shift in their ADP. Now for, the opposite example would be like, I'm not really taking Malik Neighbors right now, but I'm not worried about it because I think Malik Neighbors is going to move backwards later in the summer. We're going to be able to get him later. So I think, generally it's something that's always on my mind. What are my exposures looking at? Am I comfortable with these exposures? But I also know that ADP is going to shift over time. And also just like draft to draft, you can see even right now, if I do 10 drafts today, I can keep my rankings the exact same, but I'm going to have different opportunities draft to draft. So, I might always be taking those running backs in the later rounds, but there's going to come a draft where like you say CeeDee Lamb. If you want to get CeeDee Lamb, there's going to come a draft where CeeDee Lamb is just going to fall to you at the 11 pick or something. So you can keep him ranked behind Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Christian McCaffrey or whoever it is that you're taking over him, and you're going to have opportunities to draft him without reaching to take him ahead of players that you like better. So I don't worry about it that much right now. But yeah, once we get to August, if I'm like, I don't really see a big separation between CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown, then I might start I'll reach a little bit and take CeeDee Lamb over Amon-Ra St. Brown. But yeah, for now, I'm not really, going out of my way to even out my exposures that much. Now, I say this, I think that is the correct approach is to not do it that much. I do it some. Like I can't help it because there are players that I'm like, I really don't feel that differently about. Like I had this conversation with Corain last week, Tedero McMillan and Luther Burden. Like, if I use his product, I'm always going to get Tedero McMillan ahead of Luther Burden. To me, it's not that clear that I like T-Mac that much better than Luther Burden because I think there's pros and cons to both. So I might sometimes reach and take, a Burden over Tedero McMillan, profiles like that where it's like, it's not that clear to me that this is a different tier of player. So I do sometimes reach a little bit, but I think that the correct approach is the, let it, work itself out over time.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense to me. So also this year, we're definitely seeing more people. I will say, I think that part of like the running back heavy discussion, which is why I love that you answered that first question with quarterback and not running back, because I think it's sort of like the default to talk about the running back. Not to say that it's right or wrong, but I do think that it might be a little bit overblown. Like the idea that people are like going so crazy for running backs right now and such. And like that, like it's so totally different than what we saw last year. I would argue that last year we still saw a decent amount of running backs going early in these drafts, especially because the year before that running back was actually pretty strong. And so we are seeing some, like, I think that part of it is the narrative of like some zero RB bros who are now touting, going earlier around running back is making the entire industry be like, oh man, like everyone's going earlier around running back now, which is probably true to a degree, but there's still some good wide receiver picks in there. But the meta has certainly shifted. Let's just say that. Let's say that people are more okay in drafting multiple running backs with their first couple of picks. So my question though, and this is one that I asked Liam last week as well, is this a year then to zig when everyone's zagging and go zero RB as people are more comfortable with a robust RB approach?
I think that the correct approach is always to just take what the draft room gives you. So no, I don't think that it's necessarily the right year. Like, I don't think that you should be forcing zero RB this year because we don't have the same type of late round running backs that we used to have. So part of the reason that, I was really in on zero RB, I mean, even last year when it didn't really work out for me was because I thought at least last year that there were tons of late round running backs that had really strong profiles. It was, a really strong rookie running back draft class where you could get these rookie running backs late who should have a ton of upside, have some contingent value. Now, for me, I took all the wrong ones. I was taking Rashard Smith, Jarquez Hunter, et cetera, et cetera. Sure. But I know you started talking about Kyle Monunga later on in the season after not really loving him early on. Woody Marks, like there were these running backs that you could get later on. So it made more sense to do more zero RB when there were stronger running backs later. Now you have a lot of the running backs that are like young running backs that we see have a lot of upside. You can't really get them in the later rounds anymore. Like even last year, you could get like a Tyler Algier. So I love the running backs, particularly in best ball, that have some standalone value. Like they don't need anything to happen, and they're going to have some double-digit scoring weeks, but then also have like awesome contingent upside. So last year was like Tyler Algier, if something happened to Bijan Robinson, was going to be awesome. You just don't really have a ton of those guys later on. So if you, and you need to score some running back points early on. So you really can't wait too long, I think, to start drafting running backs. Now I still do some 0 RB-ish builds where I won't take a running back until like the 7th round, but it's tougher because we don't have, you know, a ton of these, and you do have some, like you could, I mean, Brian Robinson might be an example this year, replacing Tyler Algier in Atlanta. Who knows? Like you can probably find some of those later on in drafts who are going to have, who will have those, you know, 10-point weeks here and there throughout the season, even without an injury. But they're more difficult to find because people have gotten sharper about how to find the right running back profile. So like the running backs who have that, you know, standalone value. Blake Corum is now going in the top 100 picks. Kyle Monangai going in the top 100 picks. The type of running back that you used to maybe be able to get at like pick 140, 150, you can't get them there anymore. So it is, to me, more difficult to go 0 RB this year than it has been in years past. But then the tricky part there is it does feel like, you know, we have a lot of kind of aging running backs with a lot of miles on their legs at this point who are going in the early rounds. So it does feel like we're probably going to find some later round running backs who don't have a ton of standalone value, but probably do have massive contingent value behind Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, whatever, and name any of these running backs who are veterans who have a ton of miles on them. But to me, it's like you can still go after some of those backup running backs without going 0 RB, because I just think that the tough part is you do need to get points early in the season to advance your team. You need to get some points from running back early on, and it's tougher to find those running backs who are going to score early points later in drafts this year. So I am doing some 0 RB, but I'm not taking it to the extreme that I've done in past years where it's like, I'm not taking a running back till the 10th or 11th round. Like to me, 0 RB now is like 6th or 7th round is when I start taking running backs.
Yeah. Agreed. Are there any middle or late round backs that you've really gravitated towards over on DK?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the ones, that I mentioned, you know, I've taken a fair amount of, Blake Corum, Kyle Monangai. The one that I'm really in the middle rounds that I've gravitated toward is Jonathan Brooks. I can't get enough Jonathan Brooks. I think I've just memory wiped the past 2 years, and just like, he was so exciting a couple of years ago coming in, and, I don't know, like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to read the medical reports. And I think like, depending on who you read, you're going to get a different vantage point on like Jonathan Brooks' outlook this year. Like, did he actually tear his ACL twice, or was it a repair the second time and he's good to go now? I don't know that stuff, but I know that there are some people, some, you know, Twitter doctors, who believe Jonathan Brooks should be good to go at this point, should be healthy. And then we just get such bullish coach speak on Jonathan Brooks. That kind of leads me to believe that like you don't really need an injury ahead of him to Chuba Hubbard for Jonathan Brooks to take over as the top running back on a team that really wants to run the ball. So to me, Jonathan Brooks is kind of that mid-range running back that I've really gravitated toward. Now he's getting a little bit more difficult as he gets closer to the Blake Corum and Kyle Monangai, because to me, like that's kind of the tier that he belongs in. Now I do think that he has a probably better odds than either of those two to take on like the 1A role without an injury, but I think that they have probably a stronger hold on we're sure of their floor, like as the 1B for a guy like Kyle Monangai, Blake Corum. So to me, that's kind of the right range for Jonathan Brooks, until we hear something more bullish. And he's moving kind of in that direction, but he has not quite gotten there yet. So I've been drafting just a ton of Jonathan Brooks.
Nez takes, what's been the most common build for you this year over on DraftKings?
Yeah, right now it's been, and this kind of hurts me because I am like a contrarian by nature, but I am doing a lot of hyperfragile, the 4 to 5 running back builds right now. It just makes so much sense in the current meta to do that. And especially on DraftKings, a PPR website where you can really just backfill those wide receiver spots with volume and just, get lucky, catch one of these guys on a game where they catch a touchdown. It just makes so much more sense than taking bets on those late round running backs that really need contingency value to pay off for the most part. I mean, maybe some of these guys have their own standalone role that we haven't really seen yet. There's some rookies, there's Marshawn Lloyd back there, but really, really feel more comfortable drafting the wide receivers late and tight ends late. as opposed to the running backs. But I would love for it to be a 0 RB year because everybody's convinced that it's not. It's just pretty hard to do so right now, but I'm still trying.
That's how I feel too. Like I'm still throwing out some 0 RB teams because I don't want to miss it because like realistically, I've been doing a lot of research for my draft guide. The last 2 years at running back have been sort of the most predictive years that we've seen at the position over the last like 15 years. Like it's been very, very strong. Whether that's due to injury, but I also think like the NFL meta is playing into that a little bit with just it being more run, because it's also been the most run heavy years over that time frame as well, which kind of like allows for, yes, like there might not be as much target share going to running backs because it's feeding into tight ends, but they at least are seeing more work on the ground to kind of combat that. Whereas wide receiver, they're just not. And so you get sort of like a flatness at wide receiver. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat where like, it just, you feel so uncomfortable this year more than ever going 0 RB. And I think maybe the market's a little bit sharper too. Have you noticed that? Like, do you think that the running back market is slightly sharper with like the player takes that we're seeing out there? And just like, you know, like a backfield where you have like a Ramondre and Travion, like two guys that are middle round picks. It feels like a Ramondre historically might have been ahead of where Travion's going, but it's just not happening this year.
Yeah, no, I think you absolutely have to admit that the field is getting sharper. You know, as best ball goes on, you are clearly seeing adaptations to the draft boards right now. And that the running backs are a prime example of it. I think guys are very appropriately priced in terms of roles that they have or have had in recent memory, plus factoring in how many high value touches a guy has in an offense and baking in that uncertainty of the situation, like very appropriately, in my opinion. Like that late second round, just loaded with running backs that all have like different forms of upside in terms of touchdown equity versus their role, especially as a pass catcher on DraftKings as well. I think the field's gotten pretty sharp at identifying who the strong running backs are and how to value them appropriately, like across the board.
And it feels like, do you have I mean, I'm sure you have like some like favorites in like the, you know, round 9 to 11 to 12, or whatever the case may be, you know, like we'll just dub them like later ish type picks. But at the same time, does it not feel like once those like year 2 guys are off the board, especially in like round 5, you know, like the Tutons, the Travions, if you want to throw them in there, though I've personally been drafting more Ramondre than Travion, but like those types of players, it feels like there's just a big like drop in projected production after those guys. Do you feel that too?
100%. Like you are buying points for sure. Like you're able to buy points at those picks. Is, you know, not like I came up with that term myself, but that's how I think of it, right? When I'm drafting running backs in that range, I know I'm going to get some points from those running backs. Once you get past, and like Alvin Kamara is like shooting up draft boards right now, which like I would agree with. It does sound like he's going to have a good role in that offense, which would be great for PPR. As soon as you get past him, like in round like 14 on, at that point, you're just like buying hope and the hope that like these guys have something that happens to their running mate that allows them to ascend to RB1 status. And there are some decent bets there, some that are certainly better than others that can, I think I have the confidence in them, assuming that strong RB1 role if that situation takes place. But at that point though, like, these guys are not guaranteed to score points. Yeah. And for me, that means something, right? I think there is definitely something to that where, you know, the probabilities are not in your favor for those guys to hit, but we are well aware of the upside if that does take place.
Yeah. 100%. If we're looking at the early rounds, do you have any guys that you've been generally fading this year, or are you sort of like spreading out exposure? Like, I guess you could also talk about how you've approached that historically, because I think a lot of people are always curious about like, you know, do you want that 4% blanket for everybody, you know, in the first couple of rounds, because it's a more comfortable way to sort of approach things.
Yeah, no, I've always taken a pretty strong stance in the first 2 rounds of drafts. Last year, just to kind of toot my own horn, pat my back here, I faded Brian Thomas Jr. pretty heavily. I faded Bucky Irving pretty heavily in favor of guys like Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor, just thinking like, wow, these guys have like really, really strong profiles as running backs. And I can build out teams that I think give me better expected value than if I, you know, took some of these other risks. This year, I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking some fades here. The 2 fades that are the strongest for me, and I think this might come off as spicy, is Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley this year. These guys, to me, I think have some concerns, different concerns for each. Saquon, for me, the concern is that explosiveness still there that we saw 2 years ago that really just did not show itself last year? Can we fully put that on the old OC? I'm not entirely convinced, on top of the fact that he's going to lose a lot of these goal line touchdowns. That is so massive that like him compared to Derrick Henry's getting that rock. Yeah. Saquon's not, man. And that to me really, really hurts the ceiling there. And the JT bear case for me is just, are we 100% certain that Daniel Jones can not only come back at full health, but do what he did last year?
Right.
I've been a Daniel Jones defender. I thought that he had some pretty good seasons in New York, but the truth of the matter is that he's pretty inconsistent. And if he can't do what he did last year, it's a cascading effect on that offense. And it starts with Jonathan Taylor's ability to be who he was last year, even though he has obviously such amazing skill and can break long runs, even no matter who's at quarterback. But it's hard to deny that Daniel Jones was a big reason why he was so successful last year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, you can even look at the splits, right? After Jones went down, it was just disastrous. I mean, everyone who had Jonathan Taylor, they were like, "Oh, I got the league winner," and then it just went to the crapper because the offense just was horrible, right? And that's I definitely more so for me with the Taylor take, the Saquon take. I've still been taking Saquon. I'm not overexposed, but like still drafting him. But the difference too is that like there's a difference in cost. Like even those like 4 or 5 picks is significant because with Jonathan Taylor, I think Amon-Ra only just started to officially go ahead of him in ADP. Mm-hmm. And to me, like St. Brown, I'm taking him over Jonathan Taylor all day. Just based on what his floor ceiling combo looks like. And I mean, he just projects really well. Amon-Ra St. Brown does. But the JT stuff, it's hard for me to really see a significant gap in projection from him to the bottom of that round 2 tier with some of those rounds, like a Derrick Henry, let's say, right? Like, is there truly, JT will probably catch a few more passes and be, more of a plus in the passing game. And yes, there's less competition for him on that team, but like realistically, we know Derrick Henry's in the better environment, like locked in better environment. Like you said, you have to play into this Daniel Jones thing a little bit to really buy into Jonathan Taylor. And so to me, it's like that tier almost starts to begin with Jonathan Taylor, and you just don't want to be drafting at the top of that tier in the end.
100%. That's really where I'm at, is like he is sneaky in that tier. And because there's a gap between him and the next RB in that range, it feels like he's not. And it feels like you're supposed to take Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. But in reality, the projections are not that different. And I think that's where stands can really come into play. It's risky, but at the end of the day, like if you're playing DFS, and you have a guy that is more expensive but projects the same as a guy that is cheaper in cost, you're probably going to take the guy that's cheaper in cost.
Exactly.
So you can really make some outsized bets in best ball using those principles, and that's what I like to do. I like to take some risks and flesh things through like that.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Best ball guy, what do you think for people who are maybe getting into, dipping their toes into best ball a little bit? What do you think folks get wrong when thinking about season long and then going into best ball? And what are some of the pitfalls there?
Yeah. So I was imagining someone coming over from, a redraft landscape into best ball for the first time. And one of the things that I think that people need to realize about best ball is you're playing a massive tournament here. That is really the big difference here, is you have these tens of thousands to 100,000 person contests And essentially, you cannot add and drop players, right? That's the major difference with best ball. So you need to plan your teams to have not only the firepower for the late season, which can come sometimes from those, handcuff running backs, rookie wide receivers, stuff like that. But you also need to be careful about the fact that you can't add and drop players. You need to also try to not take zeros on your roster. So it's really this game of building teams that don't have zeros, but also yet have upside baked into some of these profiles that can break out late and give you that like late season hammer. You really want to look down at a team in best ball that advances through the regular season into week 15 that has like, these really fun rookies that are recently breaking out, or you do have the Bucky Irving of 2024 who has taken over the backfield that you got in the 15th round and is starting now on your roster, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I was actually doing a live stream last week, and we always hear the phrase better in best ball, right? Where like these players are better in a best ball environment than they are in a season long environment. Yeah. And I think that when people, and to your point, I think that the way that people think about that is almost backwards, because they often think, oh, I need like, of course you need spike ceilings and weekly ceilings and such. But I also think that like, they're not thinking about it. Like for instance, Chris Rodriguez, right? Mm-hmm. Or Jordan Mason types, like those types of like early down grinders where their ceiling from a receiving perspective isn't that crazy. I don't really mind like a Jordan Mason. It's whatever. I mean, it's late enough that I'm not going to really like care if someone like has like a really hardcore stance in these guys. But realistically, like a Jordan Mason type, I'm probably going to like more in a best ball environment than I am in a season long environment, because there's going to just be some production from those players, but we might not know when that production is going to come. And so I think that there's also, like, to your point of not taking zeros, like those players that we typically are like, oh, I don't really care about that guy. Cause like even in my draft guide every year, I'm just like, get the guys that have ceiling, only worry about ceiling. And that's what you should be doing. But you actually do have to think about the floor for these players and not just draft, Nick Singleton over and over again, because there's a chance that Singleton's a zero this year. Like that's a very distinct possibility. Not to say that he can't be something. I still have drafted him, but you have to check yourself a little bit and make sure that you're not overweight on some of those players. Is that the way that you kind of see things too?
Yeah, and I'm fine if you want to be overweight on Nick Singleton, like call your shot on these late round guys, of course. But absolutely, I think every single year, the staple of having good advance rates are the middle round running back hits. Like they could be Jordan Mason or Chris Rodriguez this year. I mean, we saw it with like ETN. I don't know if we want to say Achan Jr., but ETN, Javonte Williams last year. These guys were the same exact bets, right? Kind of grinder backs on kind of ambiguous backfields. The way I guess those, they are ambiguous. Yeah, I would say Tootin's an ambiguous, player right now. So it's like these guys can be massive advance rate pieces. So absolutely. But and then in the same right, you can still mix in a really fun upside pick like a Nick Singleton at the end of your drafts. Yeah. So
I always try to like balance all right, how risky was I in some of these profiles earlier on in terms of getting guys that might be zeros? And then, late, like there was a draft, I drafted Zach Charbonnet, which I haven't gotten a lot of Charbonnet, but it was he fell, whatever. And then I was contemplating, I was in chat, and actually Emo was watching. So shout out Toxic Tower, but Emo was watching the stream, and it was the 20th round, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, should I go running back or wide receiver? And Emo was like, you should go running. And he made a great point. He's like, cause I let the chat kind of vote which direction I go in. And he's like, you got to get running back because we can't assume that Charbonnet, is healthy. He could be a zero realistically. And so, I ended up going running back in that case just to get a little bit more beef, at the position after potentially taking some of those zeros. All right. With all that being said, what's one of the more overlooked thoughts or strategies you think that more people should be aware of with best ball?
Yeah. So this one, I wanted to relate it to my DK Millie Maker finals team last year. And I'm just going to say it's unique pairings. I think last year in this, sometimes the unique pairings come in two ways. Sometimes it's a forced unique pairing where I go Genty at the turn, but I pull up Nico Collins or something something where the ADPs don't line up whatsoever. Or if you're in a spot and this actually happened to me in a draft last night, but last year I was able to go Amon-Ra, and then Puka fell back to me. I don't remember if this was during the Matt Stafford back problem kind of thing, but the Amon-Ra Puka combo last year accelerated that entire team into the finals. So I think having that unique pairing can be a big lever to pull once you get to the finals. So, and this is kind of there's two ways to think about this, right? You can either force the unique pairing, or if you're in the middle rounds, like if you get picks 6 through 9, kind of, you can almost go off of the top of ADP. And last night I was doing a Millie Maker and I got Amon-Ra at 9 or 10, and then Lamb fell all the way back to me. And that in my head, I was like, that is almost the exact same feeling as how it felt when Puka fell back to me with Amon-Ra on that team that got me there. So I would say that, or one other thing would be winning the flex. And I think this one might be more actionable, but I think people take quarterback and tight end too early, to be honest with you. And I think grabbing the strongest possible wide receiver running backs oftentimes make the strongest teams. Winning the flex, those two positions up at the top of the board, those guys have the best chance of breaking out. Whereas you can find later round quarterbacks, later round tight ends that can be the big hits for the season.
So when you talk about unique combos, and specifically with the Millie, is that something that you're doing immediately now, or are you waiting maybe until like August to make sure that ADP's settled a little bit?
I'm waiting till August. Great question. Okay. Yeah, definitely waiting till August. We know news can move stuff around. I would say maybe, if you're doing all 150, you get that itch during the summer. You mix it up a little bit because you don't think Nico Collins is going to move anywhere or whatever. But as we know, guys get in legal trouble, they get injured. There's not really too many reasons why guys rise all that much, but they can definitely fall. So I do like to wait till August. I think doing the majority of my expensive drafts, I like to do them in August in general.
Yeah.
So,
do you find another thing and this is completely like, it's kind of related, but if you get that like Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb start, okay, and you're like, oh, this is sick. Like this could go really, really well. And like, let's say round 3 falls into place too. Do you find yourself, and this is a completely subjective, opinionated thing. Like, I don't think there's a real answer. Maybe you feel like there is a real answer, but do you feel like when you get a start like that, you then force the issue and just get your favorite plays from then on out because you really want that lineup to like you're like, all right, I already hit the jackpot early on with these first 3 rounds. I'm just going to get the dudes that I think are going to hit. Cause obviously we have our favorites, right? I'm just going to get the dudes that I think are going to hit. Therefore, this could just be the lineup that I'm going to sort of like hold on to and say, this could be the one that brings it home this year.
Definitely. I mean, I think more through a structure standpoint. So I'm like, okay, I have Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb. I have the wide receiver 1 and 2 on the season. Like, think about it like that. So then I start building my draft backwards in my head. It's like this team obviously is going to need running back points. Let's just make sure this team advances because
that you don't screw this up
because people don't have Amon-Ra Lamb in the finals. They like that combo is so rare and unique. Like I said, it's such a big lever that I'm pulling that. And, maybe it is different on DraftKings. Maybe that is common. Sorry if it's not. I've only done 15 DK Millie Makers.
No. Look, it's not a very super, super common thing. I mean, like Lamb will fall at times just because people on DK will be pretty wild, at that like 1-2 turn. But it's not, I would not call it a common start. Yeah.
Yeah. I would just say once you get it, just make sure you can advance it from there. So back to let's make sure we get running back points. I think in the 3rd, I went with maybe ETN or something, just trying to get some starting running back points like that. Yeah, like ETN, Scatabo in the 4th, whatever. But yeah, that's all I'm thinking through. I'm also thinking like it would be super ideal to get Dak or Goff on this team, maybe even both, like just fully commit to those 2 offenses. But that's really all I'm thinking is let's get this team to week 15 where no one has this combo and I'm going to have it.
Yeah, let's not screw it up. And I think like it's also just like, let's make sure we don't get screwed at quarterback, right? And like just like reach a little bit just to make sure that when that quarterback run inevitably happens, that we don't screw ourselves over, which is, my gosh, just a side rant. I had Puka and Devontae last night, and someone took naked Stafford way above ADP, and it's the most tilting thing on the planet.
It is. It absolutely is. And to speak to your point, someone took Dak one pick before me with no Cowboy, just
unreal
on that team in the 7th round. I was like,
unreal.
Yeah.
Although the great Adam Levitan has noted that as tilting as those instances are, it's great that we're drafting with people that do that, because that means that rooms aren't as sharp, right? So it's a little bit, when you think of it, that it stings, it sucks.
It does.
But then, you fall back on that idea and you're like, all right, I'll take it over the long run.
Yeah. And to my earlier point, it's also like it opened up this ability to be like, all right, it's still the 7th round. Like, let me take another usable running back here. I can get Jaylen Warren, who might be this year's Kenneth Gainwell on this team instead. Right. So let's go that route.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.